Hey, welcome back for another episode of Porn Rewire with me, Dr. Trish Leigh. I have heard people tell me, well, it's really difficult to know where the boundaries of porn begin and end. The shades of gray, if you will. So this is hot off the press because either this is new to me or this is a new hijacker move that is coming into the minds of people to convince them that there's shades of gray. So we are going to break down the shades of gray in porn today. This is a total hijacker move, just so you know. And what I mean by that is when you were young, you found pornography. Pornography made your brain feel really, really good. The reason your brain is looking for shades of gray is because if you've committed to not consuming pornography anymore, that hijacker in your brain who needs the dopamine that you've been giving it for so long from pornography, that hijacker needs the dopamine and he will try to find a way that draws within the lines but pushes your lines out so that he can get the dopamine hit that he's looking for. And so the way that it plays out is, maybe this is okay. So you find porn when you're 12 and the arousal level changes the arousal level that will be needed moving forward in your brain. So here's what I want to tell you in this very first section of today's podcast episode. Your brain performance pattern changed when you found porn. And you probably felt it. Most people do. And basically that feeling was your brain changing the baseline level of dopamine that would be needed to feel good and to feel pleasure moving forward. So remember, dopamine is the neurochemical of more, motivation, and pleasure. So it motivates you back to more and more higher levels of pleasure, and especially when it changed that baseline level in your brain when you were young. Okay, so let's just say you're 12, you find porn, and now it becomes something that you go back to feel good, to change your mood. Your brain floods with dopamine, and you used to feel stressed, but now you feel good. It's mood regulation. So this becomes the tool for mood regulation, primarily for stress and then for boredom. But the caveat on boredom is, in today's day and age, your brain is highly overstimulated, so it's not necessarily bored. It's just not getting the massive amount of stimulation that it's used to getting. So when you feel bored, it's the desire to get back to the super overstimulated brain that then shifts into that neutral mode. So porn's an artificial way of shifting your highly overstimulated brain into neutral. That's why you keep going back. All that dopamine does it for you. So the solution so far is twofold. Let's reduce the amount of overstimulation in your brain, that wired and tired feeling in the first place. And if you do that, then there'll be no need to go back into the screen to shift you into neutral. But I want you to understand why you keep going back into the screen and who that hijacker is. That hijacker is that younger version of yourself who needs this, who needs his brain shifted into neutral really fast. It is an emotionally immature way of being able to feel good and to de-stress. So part of the journey is finding emotionally more mature and healthier ways to cope with stress and boredom while we're reducing the overstimulation and finding new tools. So that's why when the hijacker tries to trick you with this whole shades of gray shenanigans, I want you to be able to say, this is just a trick. This is a call for this hijacker to get what he wants. He's trying to bait me back into the behaviors that he's used to, because that hijacker is that younger brain version of myself who just wants to feel good fast. So that's your choice when it comes to, do I go into the screen for a huge dopamine flood right now and run the risk of it flooding my brain out and keeping my brain in strained brain, going between wired and tired, dipping my brain into drained brain where I can't think, I can't focus, I have brain fog and erectile dysfunction? Those are the choices: damaging your brain by going back in for short-term gain, long-term loss, or short-term sacrifice, long-term gain. The solution is growing that version of yourself up by improving your brain performance pattern and learning the skills that you need to. So in the future, you can make that better decision, hopefully today. Now, if you've been listening to my podcast for any amount of time, you have definitely heard me say multiple times, everything in the whole world exists on a continuum. So everything shades of gray, right? Literally everything. There's hardly anything black and white in this world. So when we talk about pornography, where does the line begin? Where does the line end? If we're talking explicit content, anything that's actually in a porn site is clearly pornography. Anything that would be considered sexual media for dopamine hits to make you feel good, that is going to be your new marker on what is considered pornography to you. And so these shades of gray are going to be different for all people. What do they include? They include YouTube videos that are sexualized. Oh, and if you've seen a couple of my videos here, some of those videos really, there's not many things that chap my arse, but that's one of them. When professionals put out videos that are supposed to be professional in nature, but they're just highly sexualized with young women who are scantily clad. So like, are you there for the professional advice, or are you there for the young scantily clad women? Be honest with yourself. Don't let that hijacker convince you you're there to learn new yoga moves, or don't let that hijacker convince you that you really care about that chiropractor adjusting that person. Please. This is when you grow yourself up with emotional maturity and you increase your self-awareness, which is the first pillar of emotional intelligence, becoming aware of your own thoughts, your own feelings, and your own behaviors and their driving forces. So videos that are seemingly professional yet highly sexualized, yeah, they're going to be in those shades of gray. So the question to ask yourself is, why am I watching this? And if you can be honest with yourself, you're doing it for the dopamine hit. That dopamine hit is the slippery slope of pornography. It's leading you back, and likely you're watching it because you've told yourself or somebody else that you will not watch pornography. That's when these shades of gray really come into play. That is the important part, because without the hijacker in your mind and in your brain, there really wouldn't be shades of gray. The shades of gray is where the hijacker is going to find the dopamine. So clearly the solution is healing your brain and developing it fully so that there's no need to go into the shades of gray. But if you do go into the shades of gray, you're moving your brain backwards. So there's videos on YouTube, social media videos, and still photos. Anything sexualized is going to fall into that sexual media category, even if it's seemingly innocent. Even the consumption of rated R movies, which wouldn't matter at all to a regulated person who doesn't have any dysfunction in their brain, but a person whose brain has been wrapped up in a compulsive sexual media mode, that sex scene comes on and it lights their brain up. We know this from neuroscience, from studies. That's what makes it dangerous. So even a rated R movie could be considered a triggering or pornographic sexual media for a brain that's trying to heal on its way out of a pornography habit. That's why staying away from any sexual media is really important to unwire that brain pattern. And once you unwire it, you can see a sex scene in a movie and your brain doesn't feel the same. But I will tell you, we've talked about this before, there's a transcription factor in your brain that kind of cements those pathways towards sexual media. So you definitely don't want to expose yourself to too much of it over time, because you will fire those pathways back up. And that's why staying out of the shades of gray are important. So I'm not going to list them all here, but let's move to your brain hack strategy for the day. Get your journal out, get your pen out, and think about all of the shades of gray behaviors that you're at risk for doing, or if that hijacker has told you shades of gray are okay and who knows where the line is and this is really fine. Write those things down, those behaviors, and see why you are consuming them. It's the hijacker who's tricking you. That's why you can see it's important to figure out what that is for you, because your shades of gray would be completely different from other people's shades of gray, except for when we're talking about that continuum of sexual media, which is clear that that continuum exists from porn sites to non-porn sites that are highly sexualized, OnlyFans, sexual media, those types of things, rated R movies to PG movies, all the way down to just a commercial with a sexualized person. We're going to increase your self-awareness. Then the second pillar of emotional intelligence is increasing your ability to self-regulate from within. So instead of having to go to the screen, even if you're just going to these shades of gray behaviors or consuming shade of gray, social media, we'll just say sexual media, you don't have to do that anymore. Instead, you take a shower. Instead, you go work out. Instead, you go ride your motorcycle. Instead, you go kick around your soccer ball. Instead, you paint. Instead, you play your guitar. These are all healthy ways to self-regulate. Then, the third pillar of emotional intelligence is social relationship awareness, being aware of other people and their needs and how you're kind of vibing back and forth off of each other, and then social relationship management and regulation. If you want more information on this, please go over to drtrishleigh.com. I offer a self-paced, self-guided 90-day program. In the 90-day program, basically, I teach you, and there's lessons and exercises in the unwire section, which is the first section of the program, for you to be able to move through a process to figure out what all of the shades of gray are for you so that you can become fully aware of them and use specific techniques and tools to not be pulled back into them. That's how you're successful at moving forward in this process. You have to unwire that link in your brain back to those behaviors or back to that media or back to that whatever you're consuming to get the dopamine to make you feel good. It has to be unlinked. Then you can rewire your brain towards the healthy optimal mode, which maybe you've never experienced. So remember, the shades of gray exist because your brain wants them to and needs them to. And when the pull of that is broken, then you are able to rewire your brain and basically develop it and grow it up into the healthiest version of itself. And then lastly, in the hardwire section of that program, I teach you how to manage stress and boredom long-term so that you're never at risk for going back to the slippery slope of these shades of gray behaviors. As always, until next time, control your brain or it'll control you.